Joining us now, as he typically does all throughout the regular season, and certainly plenty during the offseason as well. It's our buddy Chris Halicke from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Chris, thanks for taking the time, brother. How we feel? This is always the first day that the week's catching up with you a little bit.
A little bit.
It's a bit of a grind, but at the same time, we finally get on field stuff tonight. So it's the balance of like you're dragging a little bit, but there's a nice little carrot being dangled in front of us too. Still.
Yeah, man, it's a fun week. It's a week unlike any other in the entire calendar year. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of networking going on, but it's fun to learn about these players and to try to find out as much as we can about how the Steelers feel about these players. I remember last year, last day I was here, I remember having a conversation with a source, and that's when I found out that they really, really liked Derek Harmon. With meeting with him here, and lo and behold, he ends up being their first-round pick. Now, they love a whole bunch of other players that they don't end up getting a chance to draft, but it's still, this is when the process is really starting to kick off. You got pro days coming up after this. You got the pre-draft visits that'll come up, but it's a fun week here for sure.
You mentioned Harmon, so let's just start with the D-line.
Yeah.
Everyone always talks about is Rodgers coming back, but no one mentions is Cam coming back. I mean, I'm going to operate under the assumption you get at least one more year out of him. But do you still think a nose tackle type should be somewhere in the mix here as an addition?
It could be.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that's dangerous about the draft, regardless of the position, but especially a position like I don't want to call it a niche position, but it's not a common one in today's NFL.
Yeah. And I don't need Vince Wilfork,
right?
But Hargrave.
Yeah, it'd be nice, but the one thing you don't want to ever do in the draft is reach for a position just to address a need. That's what free agency's for. You'd prefer to do that. The draft is, especially earlier on in the draft, it's meant to, these are the type of players we want to draft to, impact the franchise, almost regardless of position. Of course, you have to.
That's the perfect world, yeah.
Yeah, but I think you definitely turn over more stones, possibly. It'll be interesting to see what Mike McCarthy, Patrick Graham, what those guys want to do with maybe Keanu Benton, who's been the nose tackle, how they feel about Y.A. Black and anybody else in particular. But I don't think you completely ignore nose tackle this week either.
I'd prefer to do it in the draft, and I'm excited to watch these guys work out to figure out which ones I like better. But the free agency, big-bodied interior guys don't look real exciting to me.
Chris, pick 21. We've talked a lot about trenches. We've talked a lot about wide receivers. What's your vibe, on the quarterback possibility? I know you reported the Steelers have met with Ty Simpson. I don't think that is shocking to anybody, but now we know that that's the case.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked if they didn't.
Exactly right. Because that's what you're here to do, right?
It's almost a formality at this point.
That's the point of being here.
It's breaking news, but it's really not breaking news.
That's why we're all here in Indianapolis, is to have these conversations. Does that feel like a real possibility? That's a very broad way to label it. But is it not obviously a favorite in the clubhouse, but is it something that you think is a real possibility?
Well, a really big variable on that is, how did that interview go?
Sure.
And that's something else entirely, and that's just the first step in it. If they meet with him again at the Alabama Pro Day and have dinner with him, and then they bring him in for a pre-draft visit, and they hit the hat trick on that.
Read the tea leaves.
Then
second date, third date.
Yeah. Then maybe, just maybe, it's a possibility. I think it's hard to say definitively at this point. There's a lot to when it comes to competitive drive, when it comes to a lot of other things. He doesn't have that one trait where it's just you go goo goo gaga over. He doesn't have that elite arm. He doesn't have the elite size. He doesn't have that. He's not the most dynamic, mobile, dual threat type guy. So there's got to be something between the ears that really, gets the Steelers pumping if that's a legitimate possibility at 21, because I've operated under the informed opinion that the next time they take a quarterback in the first round, it's not going to be just a guy. It's going to be a guy that they really, really believe is their next franchise quarterback.
Yeah, and to me, I'm not sure Simpson is a strong enough candidate.
I have my doubts on that, but that's why I'm curious. How did that interview go, and how does it go from here? Because even if he knocked it out of the park in this interview, what if it doesn't go quite as well if they meet with him again at the pro day or the pre-draft visit or whatever? And maybe, just maybe, they like him a lot, but when you get to 21 overall or you get to a certain spot in the first round where they were considering trading up or anything like that, there's another player that they've already met with that they are head over heels in love with, and it's like, you know what, we'd rather have that guy than Ty Simpson.
Yeah, I totally get it. Sticking with quarterbacks, most people think this part of the process will really favor Simpson. You know, he's a coach's son, should do really well in interviews, on the board, et cetera. I've never met him, but that's just what you read and what you hear. Are there any other mid-round dart throws at that position? I bring up Cole Payton a lot, and I bring up Drew Uhler a lot. Is there any? Do those guys interest you, or would you not even bother? Sawyer Robinson. Oh yeah.
Well, Drew Uhler has, talked about the traits. Drew Uhler has some of the traits. He's got the size. He's got the arm. When you look at some of the concerns with him, those are usually things coaches run to, and they like to embrace. If there are mechanical issues when it comes to footwork or upper body and lower body being disconnected, things like that, leading to some wild throws that you should never be missing.
Yeah.
Coaches aren't afraid of that. At least they shouldn't be.
No, and all these guys will have their own personal quarterback guy,
and that's
too.
the other
right?
part of it, too, is that. And then how does that dynamic work between Mike McCarthy and those quarterback guys? Because who knows how it worked between Mike Tomlin and those guys? Because every quarterback's got their own that they work with. Yeah,
that's where Josh Allen changed things. It wasn't because of the Bills.
Yeah,
right?
but then again, I'm curious to see going forward, how does Mike McCarthy embrace that? How does he incorporate that as part of not just who they might draft, but Will Howard is another guy. Like how is that going to work? So Drew Aller is a guy who's interesting to me, but it's mainly because he has those traits. When you look at just the art, if you just turn on
things you can't coach.
Yeah, if you turn on the Big Ten championship against Oregon, you see the throw that he made on 4th and 10, where he's getting pulled by a defensive tackle and he just whips it, and it's just a seed to the end zone between two defenders. You're like, I want that.
I'll take that.
Yeah, I want that. And then
I at least have seen it, and I know that it's possible. Yeah.
So it's interesting to me, and if you can get that in the 3rd round potentially, or even late in the 2nd round,
you'd be interested at least.
I'm interested in it. Yeah.
Defensive backs and tight ends at the podium today, correct?
Yeah.
It feels like the big news: Jermad McCoy not going to work out. Correct.
Oh, I didn't know that.
After missing all last season. I mean, he's 13 months removed from that ACL injury. But that throws a big wrench into this process.
Yeah, he did meet with the Steelers though, so you can at least get the meeting with him. You can just pick his brain. You can do all the things you do in the meeting with him. That's interesting at least. Yeah, you'd like to see the measurables. You'd like to see potentially 40-yard dash. Whatever else he's doing. You want to see him do some things after missing an entire season. But man, it's so tantalizing. And the thing that really sucks about these guys that are coming off of injuries is they're such wild cards in the draft. Because look, when you pure talent alone, it's like the Jordan Tyson conversation. Pure talent alone, you take injuries out of it. Tyson's a top 10 pick, but you have to include the injury factor, and the same thing with Jermad McCoy too. So it's interesting, and I'm curious to see if the Steelers continue to court him throughout the rest of this process.
So speaking of defensive backs, what are your thoughts or hunches of what Jalen Ramsey's future is here? I know they could open up a lot of cap space if they let him go. They have a lot of cap space. When Omar was at the podium, I didn't get the hunch that was something they were interested in doing.
From what I've been told and what I've reported, I highly doubt he's being cut.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we've been saying the last few days too. But do you think he's a free safety or do you think he's a slot corner? Because that changes things a lot in terms of the safety room would be barren.
Yeah, it would be, and I think that's why when you look at you go to the podium sessions today with the corners and especially the safeties, they've been meeting with safeties, and they're going to meet.
It's a really good safety draft.
Yeah, and they're going to meet with players of all positions, but whenever there's not a lot of safeties in the class, so if they're meeting with a high percentage of that position, that probably
they're
means
going to draft at least one.
Yeah, and that also might mean that they don't want to necessarily put Ramsey in one spot overall. My hunch right now is that primarily he could be your slot corner, but then depending on what happens in free agency or even the draft in terms of if you get a Jermon McCoy at 21 overall, something like that. Can he be your outside corner when you're in base? Where you're not going to be in base that often, so you don't have Ramsey out there a lot. But I think slot corner is probably where I'm leaning toward right now, but free safety would not surprise me either.
It's funny, Rob and I almost touched on this, then we go to break, and then we got a guest, and we never end up talking about it. But I want to talk about it with you, too. If Ramsey, last year there was 3 corners and 2 safeties. Thornhill was one, Slay was one. Neither one really worked out. But we would often talk about, okay, that's your nickel, with Ramsey, Porter, and Elliott. Okay, that's easy. But what about when there's 4? Are they going to take Thornhill off the field, or are they going to take Slay off the field? In this case, and then I was like, well, Ramsey should never leave the field. Now, I could make a scenario where I don't want Ramsey ever being an outside corner, so he's either going to be a slot or a free, and do you want to move him back and forth doing that all the time, or does he come off the field in base? I mean, I don't think there's an answer, but I think it's just an angle we need to talk about.
I think it's something that they really have to work through, and free agency and the draft are going to dictate that. Of course,
what's available?
Yeah. Well, if you bring back James Pierre, who would you rather have on the outside? Would you rather have Ramsey or Pierre?
I think Pierre.
There's a really good,
and the contract will probably tell us the answer to that.
Right.
Yeah. If that happens.
But if they're not able to bring back Pierre, and then that makes corner more of a need in the draft, then do you make
a second-round pick or Ramsey going out there?
Yeah, and it depends on who you take, because there are a few corners in this draft that are going to be able to become starters pretty quickly, whether it be day one or maybe not like the first game of the season, but maybe by the time October turns into November, then okay, yeah, they're good enough to start, or whatever it is. It's an interesting conversation that's got to continue to happen, because I don't think that they've just completely we're sold on Ramsey being right here. It's an interesting wild card in this, but I think one of the things that Omar Khan's always done is he's just brought in as many good players as he possibly can, and then we'll just figure it out later.
And his versatility helps too.
It really does.
Yeah.
It really does.
Chris Halicke, DK Pittsburgh Sports, kind enough to join us here live on Radio Row inside the Indiana Convention Center, right in the middle of a busy week and a busy day. Thanks for taking the time as always, dude.
Of course, dude. Thanks for having me, guys.